I'm attempting to stream it. I have no idea where it's going to stream it. It looks like it's doing something here. Maybe it'll give me an option. No, it's going to my personal account. Can I stream it?
Oh yeah, it is. It is your personal.
Looks like it's doing something here. Yeah. All right. Apparently, I have 519 subscribers for wherever they came from. But yeah, just to be a jerk, my kids are like, oh, you're not popular on TikTok, Dad. So I signed up for TikTok, and I've got 8,000 subscribers. So take that, Gen Z. I never even did a post. So so now the kids are all bragging about me having 8,000 subscribers. I don't need the number, something like that, without ever doing a post. So I guess once you have some followers on one social network, you can get them on all the social networks for just to make my kids excited. All right. I'm gonna do a quick demo of the Firebase system that came out earlier this week.
Right. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to. How we doing for presentations?
We got Crossman and David,
Okay.
and then Brad will finish up and do a little update on the Jetic side too.
And then maybe I'll do a quick overview of the A2A stuff I'm doing and the MCP. I think that's
Yeah,
for the
Firebase, A2A, the MCP stuff you've got, like a whole bunch of stuff happened last week. The 4.0
yeah.
step up.
I'm gonna close my
I was
door.
playing with both Polaris and Optimus. We'll see who owns those.
Rob, did you mention my name?
Brad, yeah.
Okay, what am I presenting?
Oh, just if there's a little follow up at the end about committees and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I wanted to thank our new members and give a quick update. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Why don't we move that to the beginning? We typically have, if we're recording this stuff, the beginning is what people watch. It's the middle and the end that we might lose people.
Oh,
Great idea.
great.
Yeah, it's been a busy week.
It's 12
That
o'clock.
oh, where'd that come
There's
from?
another.
All right. Well, it's 12 o'clock, so I'm going to count down and start recording. Everything you say will be used against you in three, two,
Wait,
one.
I have a question.
All right. So here we are. We're April 11th, 2025. 4 months in. Another
Episode 50, Roof.
50. Oh, right. Wow. Does that include all those random vibe coding sessions I do on Thursdays, or
No,
just
this is the 50th Friday.
Okay, and I am attempting to broadcast this live to YouTube just because we can, and I'm just going to share that link. Leandro has been helping with our marketing activities and social media engagement. So thank you, Leandro, for helping get all this stuff set up. I just quickly shared the link. That won't be the final resting place for our things. This is using my own personal one. We haven't been able to figure out how exactly that works. So what do we got lined up today, Rob?
Oh, we got a couple folks. Well, first of all, Craftsman. Craftsman's got. I'm really. I can't wait to see this. He's got an AI tool for gaming and character mods. So very, very fascinating. I think we got a bit of a theme going too because David, our own David Grattan, he gave a talk last week to 40 gaming startup developers, founders. So he's going to share some of the feedback and what that experience was like, kind of some of those concepts that he got into. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to our beloved Shep. He's got his McKinsey in a box getting ready. Everybody's excited to see it. It's a popular idea. It's very much time somebody does that well. So looking forward to see what that looks like. And and wow, and then also Brad's got some updates around the agetics and the committees and stuff. So I don't know if maybe you want to give Brad the mic for a few minutes and then we can dive in.
Yeah, I love the idea of Mackenzie in a box, although I'm a little more preference towards EY in a box. Given I built the EY.ai platform, but it sounds tons of interest in that space. This kind of like a functional deep research with a purpose.
Yes.
So good to see Shep doing that for sure. He's a ambitious, smart guy. Excited to see what he does there. Maybe it'll be the second company we can claim we had some small role in their success.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So Brad, want to give a quick
Yeah.
foundation update?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I won't be long. I'm really looking forward to the presentations. But quick foundation update. We have 744 foundation members. Thank you very much.
Amazing.
We have 72 subscribers, and just want to acknowledge and say thank you to our latest members. Different tiers. We have Mandeep, Audrey, fellow Harvard person, Mark T, David O, David B, Roland H, Rushep P, and Raul B, our latest members. So welcome to the crew. Thank you very much. For the committees, we have 12 committees going on right now. Everyone's full steam ahead. There's different committees. I'll be posting a sign-up form if you do want to join any of the committees. The sign-up form will be in the chat. But all of the committees are moving forward. On the financial side, we're there. So any committee chairs, anyone involved in a committee, there's a form to fill out if you want some financial money. Yeah, anything else you want me to provide an update for here, Rob?
No, that's good. If we got the committee sign-up sheets to circulate, there's lots of really interesting work that's going on. So there's and a lot of different places to dive in. So welcome everybody who wants to throw a shoulder behind some of these efforts.
We like to call it a meritocracy, which means that if you volunteer, you're in. That's the only real prerequisite is offering to help us. We're all volunteers. It's a not-for-profit. We're doing this because somewhere someone needs to push the ideas of human-centric agentics, and that's what we're trying to do. So here we are. Sales pitch over. So. Like it's been a really big week for Google. I think almost all the big news this week has been somehow Google related. But so I figured just while we're on the topic of Google, let's do some vibe coding with the new Google Studio system. But to start things off, I want to let's just look at my stats on how much I've spent and created this week. From our friends at Requesty. So this is the last 7 days. I find this board particularly interesting, so I like to start with it just because it kind of quantifies all the crazy stuff that I've been building this week. And keep in mind, this week's been particularly good. I think I put out close to 2 million lines of code. Not, this is final functional code, 2 million lines. I don't even know how long that would take you, a regular developer, a lifetime probably. And this is 7 days. So, but what's interesting, I've saved on a daily basis. This is per day, $1,186. So give or take, what's that? $7,000 in more than $7,000 in the last 7 days, and I spent $433. So there you go. It's pretty amazing. It's a 73% savings. Let's just quickly. Where's my models? I think it's probably what everyone's mostly interested in. I'm still using 3.7 latest. Looks like I jump around a little bit to 3.5. I like 3.5. To be honest, a lot of times I find 3.5 to be good, but it looks like I'm doing better in terms of caching and it's just a more cost-effective model. It looks like to use 3.7. So there you go. That's what I'm using.
And they have a big update coming next week. I won't spill the beans at all, but they're pretty excited. They got some stuff coming next week that we should see too.
Oh, good, great. Yeah, my only thing, I still haven't been able to get their thinking working. So I'm not sure what the deal there is, but no, I have to use the Anthropic model directly for thinking. So when it comes to like doing my orchestrator or stuff like that, I use thinking for that, and then I use the instruct model. As you can tell, the instruct model is doing the vast majority of the work.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of free, we've got this new Firebase Studio. So, and this is an interesting tool. It's kind of like a cross between Lovable and Code Spaces. So you can see here, I've got a few code spaces or whatever they call their workspaces, I guess is what they call it. And over here, we've got a some examples. So let's build any ideas what we should build here. Let's build something. Let's create a finance dashboard to manage the subscriptions for the Agentics Foundation using Stripe API. That seems like an easy one that we could use. Let's just see what happens. Hopefully the demo gods smile. So remember, there's two ways to use this, as far as I can tell. You can clone GitHub repos, but the problem with the GitHub repos, that's basically just a code space, and it doesn't use this kind of lovable approach. All right, so now, okay, it's creating a Stripe integration, and what's interesting is it looks like it's using exactly the same sort of approach that I'm using with my Spark process. So I guess that's confirmation that that approach was good. They seem to be using their own version of that. So now we got colors. No, I don't know. Well, I guess Leandro will like the colors. Let's just go with that. Whatever, I can change those later. All right, so now it's creating a blueprint, exactly how I would do it. It's this super fast, way faster than Sonnet, and it doesn't cost anything, which is also a plus for now. I kind of like how Google makes their stuff free. They're like taking like the crack dealer approach to AI. Get them hooked and then jack up the price when you're hooked on their service or something.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad approach, I guess.
It gets a little confusing though, because they have like Google AI Studio and they have
Yeah.
Firebase Studio. And is it a replacement or what is it?
Yeah, exactly. Startup. I'm gonna say make it more startup. It had looking with a sticky header and nav footer and nav items. All right, so it looks basically lovable. It's faster than lovable, substantially faster. Yeah, they had
Do
look.
do you think it's gonna be like a big trouble for those lavables of the world that Google is now competing against them directly?
It's I think Lovable will do well. They went from 0 to $40 million in ARR in 4 months. They're arguably the fastest, most profitable growing SaaS company of all time. I think they'll be fine. And let's be honest, Google has a tendency to over-engineer its products, right? Sometimes simple is better. What I think both are missing, to be honest, is a maybe some MCP integration. And I guess there's a new tool that Google's coming out with called their agent platform or something like that. And so which will provide the ability to integrate different agents and MCPs. I'm kind of rooting for the underdog here. Personally, I like Lovable. I think everyone on this call knows that we were, I think, one of the first users of their platform when it was still a private
GPT
beta.
engineer.
GPT engineer. So as far as the early Lovable goes, we were early. So far the UI it isn't great. What Lovable does with the UI, they give you a package like a sort of running start, which generally looks better. So let's use Shad CN for and what else? Tailwind theme. See if that because Doesn't look very good. Let's see if it figures that out. All right, let's do it. It's certainly fast. It still looks the same. Make it look more like a Y Combinator style dashboard. I don't know. That the YC teams would invest in. I'm not a big fan of Y Combinator, to be honest with you, but whatever. Let's see if it makes it look better. Anyone on the call that's from Y Combinator or whatever, my apologies. All right, so this is what you get. It's basically looks like Lovable, except the design isn't quite as good. Yeah, it's struggling with the design for sure. All right, enough of that. I'm going to show you guys some other stuff I'm working on. So this week, I was working on a dashboard for MCP, and I had an idea. The idea was basically what if I could use the server sent events, the streaming protocol for MCPs, to create a kind of hybrid agentic network, multiple agents that can collaborate with each other, do tasks, and essentially create kind of websites that are able to communicate with other websites. That was the idea. And on Wednesday, Google came out with this new specification called A2A, which is basically very similar to the robot.txt concept we came out with a few months ago. So I thought, well, they're Google and they have like all these companies signed up to use it. So why not just use that since it's almost exactly the same with a few differences. So first thing I did is I went in and created my MCP. And then keep in mind, this is about 70,000 lines of code built in roughly 6 hours, almost entirely autonomously. Then once I was almost done. This agent-to-agent protocol came out, and I'm like, oh, it's a Python-based environment, so I don't want that. I have to create an SDK. So I created an SDK, and then I created a dashboard. And I'll show you the dashboard components. So in this case, what I'm doing, this is the MCP. So for those who aren't familiar with MCP, there are two parts of MCP. The local studio environment, which is the I/O or terminal output from your operating environment. And then there's this new HTTP protocol, streaming protocol, this is based on the concepts of server sent event. That allows you to use the well-known folder, which you'll see here. The well-known folder basically provides a discovery mechanism for services on a website. Usually this was used for like sitemaps and SEO optimization. But in this case, what I wanted to do is use it for creating and connecting robots and services and other things that I didn't have to worry about configuring locally. But the problem with that is it was a pain to sort of configure those things locally. So I needed a quick way to create, different endpoints. So if I want to create an endpoint, I can go here and call it, agent or whatever, and then create the paths and stuff like that. So this is creating the structure for discovery more than anything else. Then I can save it, and then I can test it, send a response. Then I want it to be able to connect remote MCP servers that I deploy as edge functions in the cloud, like using cloud workers from Cloudflare or AWS or whatever. So in this case, I can go here. So this actual site, it doubles as an MCP server. So why do separately? So I'll do a test. I'll add that here. I don't have any security on it, so I'm just going to skip that. And now I'm connected. Now I can start testing this. So this is a remote. The other one was the local. They're both local, but for the purposes, I'm using an IP address versus a local host. Same general idea. And then I can see different options. I can connect. I can send information. I can select the status. I can configure. I can see how it's connected. All kinds of different information. Then I can federate them. So then I can get groups of websites that have MCP servers to coordinate with each other. Enter the idea of A2A. So MCP is basically a direct communication channel between two different LLMs, essentially, with a unidirectional comm. Unidirectional means that once you send in a request, the response remains open, opposed to bidirectional, which should be like a WebSocket or like a chat system, where once that connection is made, it stays connected, but that creates problems for like different types of firewalls, and it's just generally WebSockets are difficult to play with. So a server-side event's easier in simple terms. So in this case, now I've got an A2A dashboard and MCP integration that I've combined to create a kind of new hybrid approach. And I've got a couple of example agents I can discover. So in this case, I can do the same thing. I double the system to actually act as a discovery tool. So if I'm deploying agents or I want to point it at google.com, all I need to do is point it at the URL and it'll self-discover all the various MCP and agents available to me on that server. So if I click discover, you can see here that it's discovered that I've got 3 skills available. I get text processing, image generation, and data analysis. Again, I did that just as a demo. I can go in here, I can create new agents. These agents are, again, can do whatever. And the cool thing about these agents is they exist as a kind of parallel to your website. So if you're creating a website and you want the information to be consumed by agents in a certain way, maybe you might have rate limits, maybe you might have certain limitations or access rules. You can define all those things using this approach. Keep in mind, this entire thing was built without me doing really anything in something like 6 hours. So I can copy the JSON structure, I can add new skills, all that kind of stuff. Taking it a step further, and there's a whole system here that tells you about how the A2A discovery protocol works if you're interested. I can go create task system. So in this case, we can, similar to the other one, I can test it. So in this case, I can test my different processes, data transformation, and I made these up, by the way. These are arbitrary. Multi-step workflows. I can see the different types of skills available in this particular agent. I can see the code. I can save it as a template. I can send it to actually try. So now you can see that I sent it to the actual agent to interact with. So in this case, I can see that the response types, these are simple. I'm basically sending an echo. Echo means give me what I send. I said translate the French, which basically just responds with translate the French. And then to make sure it's working, I do an inverse result or reverse result, which is basically the words backwards, some text analysis, code generation. So now I've got all the sort of components here to build and deploy these agents in a way that allows us to do all kinds of interesting things. I can now create a repo. So I can create a repository of all the different agents that I can discover, create, deploy, and this is completely decentralized, meaning that all it's required for this to work is you basically including the file of the template that I'm giving you, put it on your website, and suddenly you can communicate with any other website in an agentic sort of style. So I've created a whole bunch of different templates that you can play with. And then
Is this
lastly,
server side or browser side?
that's the craziest part. It's both. So what you're looking at right now is client side. Client side's super easy to work with. Almost every website's client side, obviously. But I also built an entire SDK because I could. And the SDK is that they built their agent system using Python. Nothing against Python, but Python kind of sucks for building agents. So I built this using Dino and TypeScript. So and I didn't build it. The agent built it more than anything. But basically, it did self-documentation. Here's the entire client API. Here's servers and everything you need to use this. So I've got a better, fuller, more complete implementation of Google spec than Google does by far, and it took me 6 hours. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
It's got everything you need.
If
Just a
it's
quick.
question, if it's client side, how are you protecting secrets? Like say this talks to Supabase or something like that.
I'm using a combination. It's a really good question. I'm using a combination of cores. So first of all, you can see these are the diagrams that used to auto created. This was almost entirely created without really much input other than my initial requirements. Then I've got the Supabase functions. So then I imported my edge functions. You'll see here I've got an edge function called A2A hello. This is basically the remote function that I deploy to Supabase or whatever cloud environment I want to use. But the important part and how it's secured is using cores. So cores essentially defines my origins. So I'm using a combination of a defined and secure domain. So I'm using Cloudflare's domain security. So I guess if my domain is hacked, then I'm screwed. But generally speaking, I trust Cloudflare, so I think it's okay. And secondly, I'm using an anonymous key. So the anonymous key is what would leak potentially in the browser, but it doesn't matter. It's an anonymous key. It's just a mechanism of it's the first factor in a multi-factor authentication. So I could probably skip it altogether, to be honest, but that's the way edge functions seem to work, so I figure I stick with it. So it's essentially a multi-factor authentication in simple terms. Yeah, so it built an incredible amount of stuff. So you can see here that what I did is I imported the original repo, then I pointed at, and then it created a detailed plan folder, which I was showing you here a second ago. And you know where I put that, I think it's in here, plans, and you can see that it's made up of dozens. Then it implemented each one of these steps, step by step. Here are the tests, here are the diagrams, and data structure. The other thing that's really cool, and I don't have time to show you guys this today, or maybe I'll show you later. There's a new MCP that came out for Supabase that allows you to completely automate all the processes of complex data architecture, real-time interactions, and I just let it run for like an hour, and it built the most remarkable sort of data infrastructure. And it tested it, it revised it, it fixed it, it updated the code, it secured it. It's worth a look. Am I running it here? Let me check my let me check quickly if I've got it running.
Do you have a room mode for your Supabase MCP yet?
Yes, I do. You guys want to see it?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Let's see. I think it's in this one.
Anywhere you've shared sort of like a collection of the room modes or anything, Ruff?
Yeah, it's on my gist. This one's using my VS Code implementation, but it's very similar. So two things to look at quick. Here's the Supabase running. I'm not going to show you the configurations that I'll show you my key, but in this case, you can see I have different options: get cost, I get create project, I've got restore project. The one that's most important for Supabase, list tables, and the execute SQL. This will do everything you need. And I don't have it in this one because I actually haven't done any database work in this particular instance. But basically, I did it similar to what you're seeing for the VS Code. So in this case, the VS Code, this allows me to essentially run multiple VS Code windows and have them all orchestrated and using each other. So the first thing I did to test it, I created greeting mode. Then I've got list files. Then I've got different Booleans for you know, various types of automated development. What I'm really trying to do is run multiple versions of the VS Code simultaneously, right? So I can write files, I can execute commands, and I'm literally just creating these MCP servers just on the fly for whatever reason I need to create it for. So I've really moved to a much more MCP driven development approach, and the key to making that all kind of work is actually making sure you got this room modes file. This room modes file basically gives it the guidance.
So you're running those in code spaces, or where are you actually hosting your MCPs at?
Well, I've been using Studio mostly because I was lazy, but now that I've got this project, I'm moving away from local studio style to SSE style. And for that, I'm basically using this. And I'm creating a little, this is an MCP for an MCP creation. So I'm using this to create and test MCPs and then deploy this clusters. So this is the front end for it, but basically I just point my root code at this and say, build me an MCP to do whatever it is I'm trying to do. And so this is kind of self-testing at this point. So the better and smarter AI gets,
cool.
the more efficient
cool,
I
man.
get. It's like it's so recursive at this point. Oh, hey Shep, how's it going? Congrats on the new company.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing your Supabase MCP setup, by the way. It's all super cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I I'm like running 5 different VS in Windows as we speak right now, all doing some crazy thing for various reasons, most of which are to make a buck. But the fact that I can orchestrate, and by the way, what's cool about this, I haven't even showed you guys my GitHub implementation, which does all the project management. I can actually do all the memory for the Spark related activities, and rather than saving it as an MD file on the hard drive, I actually save it as an issue in a GitHub project, and then it refers to the whether it's been done and how it's been done, and creates an automatic update to the project as it completes the various parts, which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been wondering how to record my checklist in my goals file that I set for my agent.
Yeah, there two ways I'm doing it. One, that I vectorize it, and the simplest way to vectorize it is again, Supabase has a PG vector, and if you do vectorize it, make sure you include the contextual information relating to whatever it is you're doing for that goal. So the contextual information would be things like a diff, files related to what was done, like a directory structure relating to the update, and potentially a secondary log of all the things that it did to get to the point of a functional implementation of that thing. So the tests. And then the great thing about that is you can refer to that later if you run into similar problems. Didn't I fix that yesterday? It'll go back and it'll just use the same diff. Hopefully that's you. I've been rambling for 28 minutes. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm done. I got a lot to cover.
Yeah, lots to cover. That's great, Ruth. Thank you. So, Craftsman, are you all set?
Yep, I'm all set.
Oh, new glasses too. Looking good.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, just broke one. I wish an agent is there for it, but not yet. Cool. Let me share my entire screen. Cool. So what's the problem statement for today? The problem statement is allow games and no one is developing MCPs for games, but they're developing MCPs to do game development. I'm not against, but I'm like, come on, guys. We have Google's chess game engines, but why no one can do it yet? And it's like, okay, let me build a proof of concept. And I was like, start integrating with Unreal Engine Unity. That's a demo for a later day. But this was my first version to just prove the idea that even it exists. So probably a quick system flow. How do we control the character? This is a simple game engine of Mortal Kombat I built, and all the characters can be controlled by an API, which is required by the MCP. Yep, that's hoping so. That's the way. That's why we have this, right? You see, each NPC can be controlled by a player ID. So in the future, you don't need to bother. You just get the player ID with NPC ID, and you can control this one LLM as long as it has sufficient compute. Boom, we can compute. And in this case, I'm using Grok, and you're going to see how freaking fast it is. And basically, you get the player ID. We have a Pygame game engine. It has the game logic, it has the physics, it has everything. Every single second, we'll be sending an image to this. We'll be sending screenshots because Grok doesn't support video streaming yet, but Gemini supports video streaming. But at least I don't have it in the API yet, at least for now, when I was playing with this. And takes a screenshot, send a response, take action. And this is the data flow diagram. And this is how the vision control works. Take a screenshot, send a screenshot into a queue because it takes time for getting the response right. Like suppose if there's a latency in the Grok, you don't want to send 10, 20 instructions at a given time. So just implement a simple queue, process the image, have a prompt construction, and this one. And today what I did was like, okay, I want to implement A2A and use Anthropic's MCP. And I love A2A. But also at the core of it, right? What is an A2A is basically an MCP hooked up with an agent, where one MCP agent which is hooked can connect with another MCP connected to an agent, right? So no complications, no biggie, right? And at the end of the day, all of these are agents. Like the two gaming characters are agents, and everything are agents. So this one, and I just took this as a lesson, like what is SSE, what is STDO. I implemented both, see the pros and cons. Like you can't learn without implementing it, right? I mean, anyone can read theory, but I like to implement and learn it from practical. So I'm more like this one. And one interesting thing, takeaway. When I give Grok or like this SLMs, right, to just give an instruction, it does a shitty job. But just add an extra statement like this, why it should do a reason, right? It does actually much better thing because it knows what it does really well. And this is very much true to all SLMs. Yes, obviously JSON reconstruction sucks. So I have a regex built to repair JSONs and it works 95% of the time. But yeah, so let me run, let us run one agent and let us run one agent here. So I'm running player two. I'm going to be player one. So let's run both at the same time and just see. And then I'll play like human versus this one. So it tries to dodge. Yes, obviously there's a latency thing, but when it sees a punch, it tries to dodge the bullets and dodge everything. And let me do one more thing. I'll terminate one API, and I will do this, and I will turn R. So I'm playing the game now. So it's
you're manually doing it, or you're playing against computer? What's happening?
I'm controlling the red player now. Blue player is not controlled by me, but I'm now controlling the red player. So let us say, oh shit, oh shit, oh man, it won. Fuck. so okay, so okay, and that is
Is this open source? Is this open source? I'm going to this repo now if it is.
Yeah, it's open source. I mean, I haven't pushed the code yet. It's local, but the crazy thing is this is Grok. If I'm using Gemini, it's slow as fuck. But when I'm using Grok, it's extremely fast, right? When you're like getting 3,000 tokens per second. But I think the amazing point over here is right. I feel people should. This is a really good use case where I like MCP. Like this standardization can help to control NPCs, like using just by swapping the player ID. It could be NPC ID, right? And you have the NPC ID's characteristics stored against a prompt database. And boom, you can control hundreds of NPCs just on one machine language model, as long as you have enough compute to scale it out and you're running it out. So this was just the idea I had.
So I noticed you had A2A in there as well. So and where do you make the decision when to use an MCP versus the A2A protocol?
I don't have any strong opinion with A2A, be frank, because I believe MCP connected to an agent is, I'm not going to call it something new. I'm just going to call it an MCP hooked up agent. But the A2A protocol is very interesting when you're using Gemini because it's easy to get stuff in. But in this case, I just copy pasted the documentation and just swapped it with Light LLM. And now I have A2A because in this case, and I'm using two agents, in this case, this one and this guy. And you have, okay, I actually closed it accidentally. So you can see in this case, this is the A2A mode. And these agents are streaming their actions continuously with each other because in text, it sees what is the performance A. But yeah, but I thought I was expecting to be slow and it was extremely slow when I was using Grok. But it's now extremely much faster with, it's faster with Grok, slower with Gemini. So, and it's slower with OpenAI, GPT-4o.
And this is using server-side events or Studio?
SSE.
Nice.
It's streaming the responses continuously. We can see it's streaming. Obviously, I'm not doing it because I'm running on my Mac, so I don't want my Mac die yet. It keeps streaming all the events. But
I think
That's right.
I'm going to make a prediction that A2A wins over MCP. It's got all the same capabilities as MCP and a whole lot more. It's like where MCP is singular, it's like a transaction, and ask and you shall receive. A2A is like, I don't even know what I need to ask. You go figure it out and then let me know when it's done.
And also Google made it. So like, when you put Google and Anthropic, they're kind of different companies,
They're solving different problems for sure. One's data centric and the other is operational. But I think the A2A being operational, I think operational is probably more useful for broader applications than send me a request and give me a response, which is basically every API ever.
Yeah.
I think my opinion in this case, I think the AAP is winning from a technical point of view. It's a wrapper of MCP, right? I mean, if I want to go the wrapper route, I can say it's a wrapper of everything.
It's a wrapper.
Yeah. But the point would be adoption. Like, I really do not have this metrics to say, like, currently MCP is the hottest adoption across every major company, right? And A2A just came day before yesterday, so I don't really have a take on it. But I think if Gemini A2A comes in first and like people really start adopting, and I'm just going to say A2A is going to win, right? And I feel in this case where you want to put NPCs to Warcraft farming, and in my favorite game is Clash of Clans and Clash Royale, I just run an emulator and it does all the farming for me, and I just keep leveling up automatically without me doing it because this is a Gemini model, right? So I mean, this is a vision model. So I just, as long as I hack my emulator running, I'm fine, and it can do all that. It can figure out that. In fact, as like next week, probably I'll demo how I use cloud computer used to play Clash of Clans, and it actually does really good in Clash Royale also, but not on the higher level because every second matters in Clash Royale, that latency. But this one, but yeah, I think the next what I'm currently working on is on just making it work on 3D games and physics animation engines because this is more 2D. But my next step is making it work at Tekken from Tekken. So that is my game. Thank you.
Awesome.
What's the
Nice.
anticipated lag between actions within the game state and then a response?
Yes. SSE does that better because like I can almost, if I get in 50% of the state right, I can always predict the next action just by rule based. In this case of SSE, if I'm streaming the responses. But yes, I agree that I think only currently Grok is doing decently well to show you, yeah, it's actually making meaningful performance when I'm playing against it.
There's two considerations when it comes to latency, at least in my experience with working on both. So I've built about 12 MCP servers at this point, and most of which were these STDIO Studio is what I call it. I don't know how you pronounce it, but that basically is for local low latency applications. You're going to use the IO directly, right? So it's nothing is going to be as fast as something running locally on your hard drive. But most things in terms of data don't reside locally, right? So the benefit to an HTTP transport is you've got this make a request and then just send me everything I need if and when you need to send it to me, which remains open. And once that connection is open, the idea of latency goes away because you don't even care if it takes, 30 milliseconds or 3 minutes. It's just coming to you whenever it's done. So most applications are fine with that. Now, there's going to be reasons why some applications don't want that, and that's going to mostly be like, how do I interact with like the hardware or the local environment directly for whatever reason? But that's likely an edge case for most things, unless you're working on hardware-related things.
Well, that's a good,
Yeah, I mean,
good
that makes
segue
sense.
to David. David had a talk in the gaming industry there last week. David, you with us?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah.
Hey.
Great. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. This is a presentation that I gave over at GDC, and I'm just going to run just to give you a run over just the general flow of the presentation that I gave. And then just have some of the ramifications and maybe how other people can apply some of the processes that I did here. Because I gave this one presentation and subsequent presentations and consulting opportunities came from it. So people can look at maybe this process here. So just ran about who we were. That's my business partner. Talked about what we're calling like an agentic first development studio in games in the process of this. This is like the technology adoption curve. If you guys are familiar with this is standard, right? Basically saying this is where we are, and it's crazy because 7 months ago we were there, and probably going to be here, backed up by what Anthropic said. And then, so the first thing that I wanted to address in the games world, especially for studios that have existed in a long time, is this. When it comes to agentics, a lot of people have tried it. You've all seen the stuff and they failed. So I first wanted to address with the first objection that most people would have, and then supported by something that was posted literally minutes before I presented. So I copied and pasted this from LinkedIn. I really like this guy here from saying vibe coding doesn't work if you're building a serious business app. I helped OpenAI and Anthropic build their models. Well, that's big cred stamp, I guess, right? But I then just basically addressed the issue about what agents do really, really well, and that it can be applied right off the bat. They then, still I've tried it, doesn't work anything. Then I gave our use cases about how we use agents in our company, and explain that if you're actually if you're not in the space and you're just trying it on the side, you actually don't get it. You don't, and that's why you're having these problems. Explaining that you cutting and pasting between your LLM and your IDE is not agentic coding. Explained to them how our setup worked. Talked about the process of human in the loop iteration, where we spend most of our time writing the technical docs and exploring the architectures that we want to have, explaining that this is where you spend the majority of your time, talking about how a typical producer and product manager's role now has become very, very technical. And talked about if you're not that, you're just going to get in the way, and this work should be done by your tech lead. And then code execution, right? Basically, put your first task in, go for a coffee. You'll understand if you're going to monitor. You've seen this is the same process that Rude uses, and almost everybody's established. So then the other thing is when we're thinking about architecture, especially in games, thinking about microservices. So everything is a microservice, keeping the context down. So things like character skin agents, micropayment agents, animation agents, like these are the things, a way to think about getting it quite narrow. And then, of course, everybody wants to make GTA 6, so let's do that. I explained that right now game engines are monolithic. The context is too large. So building Auto 6 is just not going to happen yet. And that the other issue is that Unity and Unreal and game engines use human interfaces. And this is not particularly awesome with AI automation yet. We probably want to go to something back to the command line interface and YAML stuff of building games back in the 90s. I talked briefly about where agents can help you today. So this is what my previous company used to do for 15 years, was game services. This is full stack development. So everything around having agents build your code is absolutely applicable to game services, because this is full stack development. It's outside the game engine. So if you're not doing it, you should be doing it. Talk about NPCs, which is a lot of people are working on, how it can be applied to live ops, how it can be applied to game testing and balancing way better than human beings. How autonomous procedure generation game levels and worlds can be done. This would have a high human in the loop element, but it's right there. And one area where most people aren't talking about using of AI in games is in concept and planning. This can be tightened up so much, because even though this is soft, if you look at AI agents as a colleague, you're now a game designer. I can now get my idea way more concrete, way faster, and more precise, with a lot more clarity. I don't have to wait for my concept artist. I can even tell I can tell an AI to go create me the first 25 minutes with 20 thumbnails, right? So I can generate that really, really quickly. Anyway, so this, what I put, big conclusion here is large amounts of capital are no longer the moat for creating a AAA game. And I said, I've made the conclusion that a tiny team will build a near AAA quality game in about 2 years. And by tiny team, I mean a team of like 10, right? Then I talked about what an agentic first studio might look like. First, I then wanted to revisit what an agent really is. Took them through what LLMs were previously to 3 years ago when I was working at FinAI, how we worked with LLMs. Then when ChatGPT came about, and then really what a agent is. And this was important because I for a studio that wants to continue this, I really wanted to make it clear that agents are their IP. Agents aren't generic swapping between studios. You can't take a coalition suite of agents that are for the coalition studio making Gears of War and then give them to Nintendo to make Zelda. They're different. These are core pieces of your IP. Agents are your taste. And so that made people feel a little more like, okay, there's a place for us here still. This is not about bots taking over the world. I did make it clear that there probably is a new position here, someone here, this agentic programmer, prompt engineer, whatever you want to call it, brand or taste programmer. This is going to become a role in a studio, is what I think. Core team structure, it doesn't change. You still have these core human leads, but agents as colleagues and through all these other areas. But what about the producer or product manager, right? Which was my core role for a long time. And I actually think that this is the job that's at risk. And they either need to move into understanding customer and go to market and research a lot better, or they're going to be gone. But if they do understand that, they have a place because their role right now will be split up between the tech lead and orchestrator agents and NPC servers, or because I won't go into the role because time is of the essence here. But they can become the visionary of the product. So that is a place where they can move into. So what did I say that recommend everybody do? Put a team of 3 together with the goal of creating a complete game in 3 months. I go, that's how you're going to immerse your team into actually understanding this. You can go to like we put on a workshop after this to talk about how to get yourself structured, but you can have as many workshops as you want. At the end of the day, you got to do it. And this is the investment that I think you need to take to do it. And then for most game studios are outsourced studios. And I'm just as a former one that ran one, outsourced development studios are labor arbitrage. And it's really important to understand that. And so that business model is probably gone with an agentic first development world. So anyways, that was the summary of what I did in all of, I'm not sure how many minutes that took. But I think the key takeaway that I would have from from this is, and the success that talk had, is that by talking about agentics in a vertical and how it can be applied to a vertical and using the language of that vertical, I think would be very helpful for anyone who is doing consulting in any space. Done.
Guy has a question?
Yeah, so I find in video games and robotics that real-time behavior is really important, right? So like a lot of the inventions of like zero buff and DDS and some of the protocols that sit under that for communication, if it's delayed even by a little bit, the game experience gets ruined. So my question is, how is the proposed ACA protocols something better than how we currently do, I would say, microservices and Unreal Engine communicating over event queues and things like that? What is your opinion? Does it confuse matters or does it actually help?
Let me re-articulate the question that you're asking. Is that are you asking me, does an agentic approach to a studio or to a game again, Guy, I'm having just if you're asking me what the tech on the issue of latency on game performance, is that what you're asking me?
How all the microservices or in the future agents communicate in a real-time way? Is A2A or MCP really covering that, or do we already have solved solutions for that with message queues and zero buff and DDS and all those things?
Yeah, so I think we already have those solutions. I think that the issue that I'm talking about is how the studio operates and the workflow within the studio, not the actual game engine and the services within the actual game itself. So the services, the intergame services themselves, I think are already those are solved. What we're doing is we're putting together agents on the architecture and the development of the game, not the performance of the game.
I think there's two parts, and I shared a quick link to some thinking I did 2 years ago in early vibe coding sessions before you could actually build the crazy ideas that you sort of dug into the rabbit hole. And as part of that, it occurred that there's two predominant sides to the game. There's the development of the game, which if you look at GTA 6 or whatever, it takes 10 years to build and billions of dollars to devise. Now, some of that cost is not going to be, you can't get around. There's IP related costs, music and whatnot. But a lot of the problems of a game is the procedural parts. These are things that involve just people going and testing and fixing and understanding the structure of the game itself, how it plays, the map, the experience, all that sort of stuff. And a lot of that was just laborious, back and forth, back and forth. What you can do with, I think, AI as a development partner is code aside. Like let's just assume programmers keep coding it the way they've always done it. You can create coherence. You can create systems that will optimize and test in a way that is end to end. And if you look at the sorts of stuff that we're building, most of the advancements we've seen over the last few months hasn't been in the improvement of any of the language models at all. The language models, the latest version of whatever is incrementally better than the last. What has changed is our ability to recursively fix problems and self-optimize those problems with no input from me. So now, once I realized that I could set these tests and let it run for several hours, come back and have a fully built application, that changed everything. So now when I'm doing data science projects and they're like, well, what's the best possible result out of a million different results? I literally just set my MCP server, say, go figure it out, run it until I get a 99% coherence, and then send me a message. And then that might take an hour or it might take 2 days. I don't care. Apply that to games, and then anything's possible. You've got the self-creating, optimizing, and running opportunity of some sort.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you made around. I mean, when we think about like the role of the product manager and the producer, and that's to me that like their primary role is coherence within the team itself, and AI is way better at doing that. And that's why I always challenge it. Like the producer, and like this is not about engineers losing jobs. This is really about producers. It's in the game space. It's about producers and product managers really understanding what their new role is going to be, because they're the ones that are actually being pushed out.
Get some questions here. Scott, we haven't heard from you yet.
Hey David, thanks for the presentation. You're mentioning something about a taste engineer or a taste kind of director. What can you expand more on that?
Yeah, sure. So the idea there is that like when you have agents working on like on any part of your game, it is tuned to your game and to your process and to all the way even to the way you code, the way you guys
Yeah.
want things done. And that's the taste of a studio. Like when you are a studio, you have your triangle like everybody else is, right? Time, budget, quality. And it's that mix and how you communicate those three things that allows you to get a deal versus somebody else or to win someone's IP than somebody else. And so it's that combination that is your taste. And I mean that in a broad sense of taste, right?
Yeah.
And so now, so agents need to be optimized for that taste. And so Coalition makes great Gears of War, Nintendo makes Zelda. Those are, you can't take those and
Yeah.
flip them across. And not just because the games look different, it's because the way they think about games is different, let alone the language
Yeah.
barrier. It's just like that. That's what I meant by it.
So it's kind of like taking whatever their process is that kind of creates that Gears of War feel, encoding that into an agent or kind of an agent
Into a
framework.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
and that's what I think about when I think about agentic first. Where I'm trying to just think about where we are in 2 years. It's not about retrofitting agents into our present workflow. It's about thinking, well, what is the type of company and what's the type of games that we're going to create? What's that? How do we work? And those are the agents that we're going to create. And that's unique IP to your studio, not something you can just snap and go on and put them into another studio. That's my
Yeah.
my thesis.
Are there like frameworks for that right now, or is that just kind of like a Wild West right now where it's hard to kind of put that into a framework and kind of take that with you?
I think it's
Like
evolving, and
people
I think
using,
that Groove and people in this group and on this file are probably the leaders in that space, right? But it's evolving, I mean, very rapidly. There's a number of tools out there to create agents. Like my company makes
yeah.
them. There's a ton of them out there, right? And there's bespoke agents that Groove makes all the time. So like it's and we just saw like things like Lovable and so forth coming up. Like so it's evolving. There's not. I don't think it exists today.
Okay,
Scott, I
cool.
think I
Thank you.
can answer that part. There is MCP agents by Unreal Engine and Unity. Currently,
Yeah.
Unity is really well supported. Unreal Engine is like, because there's too much. I mean, well, Unreal Engine is superior. Like you have so many ways to handle the stuff and make it much more polished.
Yeah.
But I think two things is one, there are already several game companies who are doing it. In fact, I am having my own MCP agent, which just like since I'm building integrations, right? It just knows to do things. And obviously, when I face bugs, that's where I take over. But I think it comes down to two things, at least when I'm building game engines. I use IDs like Riderstorm from JetBrains for two things. While AI may lose a lot of context because games are inherently have are insanely large code bases, and AI can also generate a lot of, sometimes not all the time, a lot of more bloated code, right? And sometimes you have to be there to steer it. But these IDs, there are certain things where they're extremely rule based. They do a lot of rule based refactoring for you to make sure that this AI is screwing up some things, and
Yeah.
it helps you with consistency. Maybe for Python or JS code, it's fine, but in the case of game engines, when even one single C file can potentially screw up your entire game file, I think these type of you have to have a heuristic things which helps to ground the AI at the same time and make sure these entities are linked properly. The path functions at one, the data is put properly, the water flow dialog is sent in properly. But at the same time, it's also about how do you accelerate, make it work, and then you just figure out making it perfect later.
Yeah.
Well, I just
Well,
want to punch something out there, Rashad, that you mentioned, or Craftsman, and that Rube was talking about. I think the term, or one of the terms anyways, is second order engineering. So you're not building a static system. You're building a system that has the intention and the ability to learn and improve towards a set goal, or continue to be dynamic and continue to improve, right?
Yeah, declarative and self-learning. Well, we got Mario. How's it going, Mario?
Hey, pretty good. Thank you so much for the time of everyone. So when you're talking about NPCs and everything, I noticed that in general everything is talking about evolutionary algorithms since it has to take into account the context and so on. What it worries me is that sometimes you need to have like to consider long-term context and when trying to check is how can we take that into account and possibly integrate it with other kind of RAGs. Let's say, for example, graph RAG, because it tries to infer some relationships. So I was wondering if some of you have already kind of made some experiments with graph RAG by chance, just to share your knowledge. And also, just wanted to share you some of the things that I saw a few days ago related to NPCs development. In the chat, there is from NVIDIA, such a technology called NVIDIA ACE, where they try to include what the research just have done, like integrated the AI technology so that an NPC can figure out and take out decisions in real time. Also shared in the chat another framework related to computer, let's say, so decision making in video games, where Red Redemption was an example, and it tries to figure out how to make decisions in the game. The thing here is that sometimes, since there is like a lot of computer vision algorithm, the latency is not the best one. So over here, I think that there will be a lot of research, but I think the computer power will come to the discussion. So I hope that the crowd framework, NVIDIA ACE, and so on can help for NPC's development. But I think that one of the things that could be important is how to take the long-term context, especially if it's like a main character or main NPC into everything. So
It's
that will be really awesome for
there's an approach I think that's the easiest, and I think that's the same approach we take sometimes when looking at long-term context for coding, which also requires substantial amount of historical and multidimensional data, right? What was changed? Why was it changed? How did it change? That kind of thing. When it comes to a game, it's not code, but contextually, it's multidimensional, right? And in the world of the game, right? There's a lot of different moving elements. So what I find the best approach is, again, the idea of contextual RAG. And for those that aren't familiar with RAG, just quickly, the most basic form of RAG is basically the conversion of a document or some kind of information into vectors that are then interpreted by natural language, which creates a similarity. So the more similar to the request, the higher the result and likelihood of the result, being correct will be. Now, that for certain things that works really well, and for other things, it's harder to interpret that information. So when you're looking at using this kind of memory style, ingestion of the information, what you need to do is think of the core information. A gamer bought an element in the game or interacted with an NPC, and then that therefore creates a secondary output, a response from the NPC in a certain way, and then that gets logged as a contextual bit of information in the vector. So what that means is later, if you encounter a similar character in the game or a similar situation, and you don't want the game to be repetitive, then you can then use a kind of natural description to say, well, this already happened, or did this already happen in the background? And then the game itself can adapt and make sure that the response or the situation of that character or gaming element isn't the same as it was before, which fixes this idea of procedural development within a game. Most games up until the last few years have been procedural. You'd have a key series of steps, step 1, 2, 3, and if you went beyond those steps, it just would do the same thing. And anyone that's ever played Grand Theft Auto sees an NPC, and you know exactly the difference between a real player and an NPC, because the NPCs generally do the same things. That solves that issue. Anyway, long story short, contextual RAG, meaning add more information to the vector that relates to the other information in other areas of the vector data store. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to explain it in a way it's not too crazy. But anyway, thanks for the question, Mario. Chris, and we're at the top of the hour, so we're in the after show here. Chris is our favorite neighborhood vibe coder. I'm sure he's hacked the multiverse or something this week. What are you up to?
Nothing like that. I just wanted to talk on the game subject. So I used to play MUDs growing up, and there's a lot of mechanics in MUDs that I've never seen implemented in any game, but AI should allow a lot of these features to exist. Like think about EverQuest or World of Warcraft. These games have like religions or gods that like have like, the way that they act or their deities. And in the MUDs that I used to play, there would be gods that were played by humans, and then they would enforce role play. And if you followed like the gods' religions, you were rewarded and such. How far off are we from games like that, where you got like Ragnaros comes to life, and then if you like act in like the way his deity says to act, you get rewarded, special powers, etc. I'm wondering when are we going to get to that? And that's what I'm waiting for.
Problem is
I think
the time it takes to create a game is longer than generative AI has been generally available. If you think of day one generally being the launch of ChatGPT, that was 2.5 years ago, right? A decent high level game isn't being created in 2.5 years. So I would say soon, but I'm gonna let Rishabh.
I think I just say from what I think, if anyone has attended GTC, right, I think this would be an answer. We are just currently hardware limited. We're not software limited currently. We're just sheerly hardware limited. And I think any breakthroughs of hardware like quantum and stuff, I think we'll be already there, right? Because we just need to know, we need more compute to just calculate all the possible permutations and combinations in any given real-time situation. And I was trying to run the GTC event locally. I mean, whatever they showed the framework, man, it kills your GPU. And I'm just saying it seriously. Until unless I had to retype the entire freaking thing on my own, which is not possible as of yet. But it's just a simple of hardware limitations. I'm betting in 3-4 years, because my two bets I'm seeing is Mac has given some insane amount of compute for $3,000 with the Mac M4 Max, right? Like 512 GBU of unified memory, meaning that is 512 GB of GPU memory. And if someone actually, which Unity is already working on, and Unreal Engine is just like, you are not performance based, and that's true because Mac sucks in the number of CPU cycles. It just has good software optimizations and ARM optimizations. But the day they crack, I think pretty much all the consumer GPUs are dead, or consumer things are dead. Everyone will be like Mac, 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 like they become sitting ducks. So I think we're not far off from there. Saying Macs, who's usually slow and steady, is going off fast. I'm betting on that. And I think NVIDIA is not going to be sitting duck, right? Probably in the next 3 years, they will release like, hey, at 500 watts an hour, we can run this 1 terabyte vGPU system, and at 1 terabyte you can pretty much we can synthesize the whole damn Sonnet 3.5 in local, which is apparently 320 billion parameter model. So we're not far off.
With the advent of diffusion-based models for LLMs, would that negate the software claim?
I think it's the hardware claim I'm saying, but I think it comes to two breakdowns. I believe it's as I see Gamma, right? You see for Gamma 27B and certain breakdowns where small models are performing really well. One way I can think is NPCs can perform really well by just doing LoRa tuning and just you change the low rank adapters and keep swapping the low rank adapters based on the NPC IDs. So boom, like one LLM can do hundreds of things. And obviously, I think in this case, this is a software optimization where how fast can you load and unload a low rank adapter over loading and unloading an entire GPU module, right? Because loading and unloading in LoRa adapters a billion times faster because you're just only going to change a couple of million parameter models. At least there is a lot of pros for it, but but it's not applicable to the universal models yet. So I think that would be case zero. And one case of this is which I love from Unsloth, Daniel Hand, is quantizing billions of parameter models into 1.76 bits, like what he did for Maverick and Scout of Llama, where he could get about 80% performance of a Maverick or a Scout on just a single H100 GPU, where you need technically hundreds of H100 GPU. So, but I still think it's still a hardware limitation yet because software will be evolving faster and the chances of iteration is insanely high. Like this very group exists because we could iterate software a billion times faster than anyone else, right? That's who we are.
It's
Totally.
an interesting space. Yeah, totally. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, my camera doesn't work, but I think that's when people like talk about AI taking hardware resources, well, it's taught that the hardware is the way that limits LLMs in the game, like real person. But what I think is gonna happen is that AIs will be used to produce those optimized characters, like in old school games. You have all 3D game like Quake, on really limited hardware. I think he can run on any like processor right now. And people from ID team, they use mathematics hacks to basically produce all these lightning effects without full shaders and those crazy stuff. So I think that if the LLMs will be, or neural networks will be put to the task of optimizing some maths and optimizing some models, we can get much better games in person and characters. And the second idea was actually about the characters. This idea when you can eat the monster. I really like this idea. When you go there and you need some resources to replenish yourself, you can actually eat monsters in the dungeons and then you get some abilities. It's really hard to implement given the amount of time you need to make artists draw all these things. But if some person can structure all these actions, then some other person can draw an example how you would like to draw just one thing. Then LLMs can quickly copy this stuff, and it's already could be done, I think so. And then you just upload all this stuff to the cloud. You don't need LLMs running on the back. So that's just quick ideas how it's gonna happen in faster than 2 years.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned eating the monsters because I used to play NetHack, which is, I don't know, like 30 years old game. I'm surprised it's still actually being developed. And they're eating like anything. You can eat any object in the game, but it's a text-based game, so you don't need artists.
Yeah, one of my first paid gigs was in 1988. I was 10 years old. It was for a company called Sierra Online, and they were famous for their King's Quest games. For anyone's old enough to remember the 1980s, and they decided to create an online gaming community when everyone had 26 100 baud modems, which is like bytes per second kind of thing. And they recruited us to do this online gaming community called Imagination. And anyway, miserable failure. It was too early, and it wasn't, the infrastructure wasn't there to support it. But what was interesting is, a lot of what's, early in this space, and it ends up happening. And what's interesting is the very technology that people imagine in these games. Like there was this one game that was created by Sierra Online called Space Quest, and it had this sort of visual console concept as part of the game where you could sort of interact with other, NPCs in the game, and it was like this whole sort of secondary online community. Fake, obviously, but and then they ended up trying to build the real thing, and passed for a few years, and it became a thing, just not by them. But yeah, I think gaming is one of those interesting areas that pushes the boundaries of our imagination in ways that, we try to actually facilitate and create eventually. So everything I think we're saying today will likely become a thing. I think that AI will probably be infused in everything going forward, and this idea of dynamic user-specific entertainment, whether that's a game or a video or any other piece of content, AI will probably be a big part of that transformation, I would guess. And it's not like the garbage you'd see generated on some people's, social media, but I'm talking high-end, high-quality entertainment value made specifically for you. Now, random thoughts on a Friday. All right, so we're doing well here. We've got, I'm going to put another solicitation out to anyone that's still on the call, because if you've lasted, this long, then you're probably into this sort of thing. We're looking for help on our Agentic Foundation. We're looking to launch a number of local events, probably get-togethers, some beer and pizza sort of things in different places. So if you're interested in helping, we have a number of different forums. I think Rob and Brad and the others can probably share some of that. Again, the other part, we're looking to sort of push the idea of agentic engineering as a not just a thing, but a profession. And in some weird way, I see the Agentic Foundation as like this kind of guild of sorts for like-minded people who want to be agentic engineers. And if I'm any indication of the opportunity, there's a ton of opportunity right now for people who can step into a business and figure out how to optimize, automate, and create these types of systems. And there's literally no one out there that they can find to do it. So if you're looking for work and you're interested and have a technical sort of, background and want to make this happen, there's this rare window of opportunity right now where you can insert yourself as an agentic engineer literally by slapping a little infinity logo on your website or LinkedIn, starting a meetup, and be the local expert in it within a matter of minutes, I'm sure. And we're happy to help. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, reach out. We're looking
That's the ambassador program as well on the website, right, Rube?
Yeah, we have that link handy. We can slap it on there. But other than that, yeah, this is it's exciting times. Like every day there's something new and amazing, right?
I got a question for you, Ruben. This is Dave Brace, San Francisco. So how do I find the local guys, for the local chapter here in, say, San Francisco? How do I figure out who they are? How do I get connected with them locally? Was there a list somewhere or some link on the website?
We should probably do that on our ambassador page. But in San Francisco, we've been talking to a group called the Frontier Building, and they're a new building that's basically been divided up into different sort of industry sectors. It's I think 14 floors or something. It might be 13. Maybe they're not counting a 13th floor, but 14 floors. And they've offered us the sort of space to do AI and agentics at no cost. So we've got a small crew forming in San Francisco. Obviously, a lot of interest in San Francisco around what we're doing. Our biggest hubs right now for like the work that we're seeing in terms of collaborators and people in general. London. I don't know what's going on in London, but everybody in London wants this. Toronto, where I'm from, and San Francisco seems to be the hot spots that we're seeing a ton of opportunities coming from. But that said, it's everywhere.
Nuts out here. It's crazy here in Silicon Valley for sure. I just wanted to know if there's a place I can go to figure out who the local guys are that part of the Agentics Foundation, and then I can reach out to them and go hang out with them and help them out.
Yeah, Dave, let's connect.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sure, no problem.
We're putting together a list. We're, again, we're a little bit disorganized, ironically. This isn't a full-time job for anybody, and we're all spread pretty thin. So anything, if you're interested in helping facilitate that, we'll take anything you can offer in that department. Yeah, it's anything else you guys want to see, cover, discuss? We got a few minutes before I got to hop on my next call.
I have kind of a mundane question, but it was interesting to me. Yesterday, I was vibe coding with Rue Code plus the Sonnet, 3.5 kind of hack, or the cheapo version, that using Copilot that a guy shared with us a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was doing well, but then I got on this one kind of, thing that it was kind of going in circles and not fixing it. So soon thereafter, I got throttled, and I thought, okay, I'm going to switch over to use the new Copilot agent feature. Switched over, it's also using Sonnet. I pointed it at the same problem, and it had a one-shot fix right away. And I'm just wondering, is it possible to get like radically different results from different agents?
100%. The issue you faced was prompt. So that is an example of prompt engineering. So the key difference between the two would be the mechanism in which you describe your problem and the way in which it went and what it was solving it. So one of the you'll see these recursive, holes it sometimes finds itself in. And the reason why you want the approach of a test-driven development strategy versus a vibe-coded, just kind of wing it until it's done approach is the tests will self-resolve, where without a test, it could potentially lose its context and try the same solution more than once in a kind of repetitive loop of sorts. When you went to the new Copilot agent, you broke the loop, right? You created a new starting point based on wherever the last loop had ended. So when you think about the process of these agents, remember that they're working in a reciprocal loop for the most part, right? Feedback loop, back, forth, back, forth. So what you're trying to do is guide those loops in a way that don't get stuck, right? And that's where the tests allow them not get stuck, because as one test gets fixed, the next test we move on to the next. One of the features of Rue is that you want to enable in particular for long running types of applications, other than the fact you want the boomerang orchestrator approach that I outlined a week ago. You want to make sure that you turn on power steering. Power steering is an interesting option that they've added a few weeks ago that allows it to remind it what its purpose is. And it also can help solve that problem. Lastly,
great with Boomerang. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it works great with Boomerang. The last part is the Rook rules, they call it, or Klein rules if you're using Klein. And those are sort of the overarching rules in terms of like how to think, how to operate, and what's the purpose. You need all of those pieces working together. Unless, of course, you're just vibe coding and you don't really have a general direction, which is fine as well.
Yeah,
But you're
I was using the rules. I mean, I had a nice, goals.md file, and I had turned on power steering, and I thought everything was going great. But yeah, I just don't know if the context window got too large or what. But I was surprised.
Are you using the orchestrator, or are you doing direct requests to like the coder or whatever?
I'm not using an orchestrator that I know of. Is that the boomerang thing?
Room modes.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I basically I use it for everything now, and the tasking feature in particular works amazingly well. Now, if you're not using Sonnet Thinking for the orchestrator, you're going to have to include tell it to use new underscore task as part of the initial guidance. If you're using Sonnet 3.7 or some other model that isn't thinking, if you're using thinking, it generally figures it out and can allocate the subtasks. But it works spectacularly well. Like everything I showed you today was built using that approach and almost entirely autonomously.
There's some really neat ideas for custom room modes. surfacing too. I think that might be a neat resource to keep on top of and compile.
Yeah. Flow codes, things like that. We see Adam. How's it going, Adam?
Guys, thanks for sharing today. Awesome as always. Um, I saw in your dashboard that you're mainly using Cloud 3.7 for everything, but for us everyday folks, that can get very expensive after a while. So I wonder what are the recommendations or any experience with cheaper or open source, mostly open source models that could perform well or perform well uh, while using Rue and the modes and all of that. Thinking about like Mistral's Codium or Quan's coding model or anything else. Like, is there anything else there that one should explore?
I
Code
can
scroll, I
answer
think they call
that.
it. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I've been using Gemini, and it gives you so much free access every day. And then I've just got 15 Gmails with 15 API keys. And then once it locks me out of one, I just move to the next. And like every day, it seems to like refresh. And then if you also put a card on an account, they give you $300 worth of credit. Be careful with it, but you can use a little bit of that too across multiple different accounts too. So that's one way I've been able to use Gemini for free.
If you're looking for
Awesome,
free,
Hammock.
yeah, if you're looking for free, like totally free, obviously the VS Code approach that guys mentioned is good. You turn down your rate limiting. So, in Rue and Klein and Cursor, you've got rate limiting options. Crank that up, to like 5 to 10 requests or up or down, whatever. You want less requests per
Mhm.
minute. So turn it down, I think. And the other option, you can use CodeStroll, but CodeStroll in particular, you're going to need to do quite a bit of fine tuning of the actual prompt itself. So within Rue and Klein, you can modify the system prompt. I should probably publish it. I did it about a month ago. I did a CodeStroll implementation. It worked great. It's not as good as 3.5 Claude or above, but it's free and you can run it using Olama. So, there's that. And if you're just learning how to get going, it's not a bad option. The other thing you could do is you can use a combination of Lovable or Bolt.new, or now I guess the guys at Google their system as a bootstrap. So what you can do is you can start your project using the Firebase Studio, and
Mhm.
then you can switch that to the workspace option within Google, and then you can actually load Klein and Rue directly in the workspace, and then you can use a combination of both. So for
Nice.
harder problems, let's say there's a problem it doesn't solve for whatever reason, switch over to Rue, solve it, switch back.
Oh, so that
Awesome.
and you can move back and forth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
There
is
you
a nice
go.
feature. And what I really like about the Gemini, to Chris's point, is it's substantially faster than Sonnet. Of all the things I love about Sonnet, it's the most capable coding system by far. Nothing comes close, but it's slow. It's like, why can't they get the damn thing running at a decent, tokens per minute? Like, it's obviously possible. It's the slowest but best model.
Well, they
And
don't have a
also,
motivation then to make it faster if it works like this as well, right?
well, you make
Like
more
if
money.
users are still using it.
Well, the motivation is if you can increase the output dramatically, let's say 10x, hypothetically for people like me who are like the power users, they're gonna spend 10 times more. So
Depends if they have the GPUs actually available, who knows?
yeah,
Like they might have some scarcity. Last question about the model to use for coding around temperature. Should we take down the temperature to like
yeah,
0 point something or leave it
zero point
around
0.2.
default? 0
Zero
0.2.
point. So there's two temperatures that I modify. And depending on which mode I'm using, I switch the temperature. So for thinking models, not all of them support temperature, but for the models that do, and I think 3.7 does, crank that up to 7.5. You want verbosity on the thinking process. You want it to be full and creative and to think of it through all the possibilities. You don't want that for code implementation. So on the instruct, you make it deterministic. You crank that down to about 2. You don't want it 0. 0 is weird artifacts start happening at 0. I find somewhere around 0.15 to 2.5, 0.25 for temperature on instruct models works the best with the least amount. The last thing, if you're using Rue, you'll see that there's an option for a diff. And I can, if you guys want, I can share my screen quick and I can show you exactly where this
Sure.
setting is. And oh, did it log me out? No, one sec, guys. I've been blabbing too much. And basically, I just gotta start my code space up again. But basically, what this does is there's a diff option, and the percentage diff option is the chunk in which you can get the overall code changed. And if you use things like Klein and I think Cursor as well, they have a tendency to change line by line, which is slow and cumbersome. When you use the chunk diff setting and set it to a like 89% setting, it can chunk the entire code base and make the change all at once, which is faster, uses the cache prompting better, and it's cheaper as well. So there's lots of little settings you can fool around with here. I'm just waiting for my code space to start up that I can show you, but if you're familiar, you can hear. I think it just started. One second.
And then as well, Roof, the excuse me. I did get the thinking, Sonnet 3.7 thinking working in Requesty.
Oh, you did?
That's in there. Yep. Scroll down a little bit more, and that's in there, which is really great. And you can then when you're back under when you're back under prompts, you can select the mode, the custom mode, and then assign a specific API config for that mode. And that's when you can assign the thinking for the orchestrator and the instruct for the actual coding.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so here a couple things to note. Here, this part, let's go start at the bottom because the most interesting stuff is at the bottom. Match precision, enable editing through diffs. Mine's set to 89%.
That's aggressive.
And I stopped it at apparently 89% because it seems to be working pretty good, and I never touched it since. So I guess 89 is where it remains.
Does that work with every model, by the way? Because last time I tried diffs, and I tried it with Gemini, that was with Gemini 2 Pro, Rue was losing its thing with diffs when using Gemini, and it was like telling me go back to Claude.
Don't use Gemini for instruct. Use it for thinking. But you never want to use a thinking model for code implementation. It doesn't work. It's just it gets too creative. It loses, it just makes a mess. But assuming you're using an instruct model, these are the settings, and you see, I turn off the power steering when I get to later part in a project, like when I'm cleaning up the very last bits. I turn that off. I don't need the power steering. I just want to fix some tests or do whatever. And to Rob's point, when you're playing with the prompts, you can go in here. So you can see here I've got different settings. So I've got the orchestrator and I got thinking here set up, and you've got different prompt settings and things like that. So you can override the settings. So and a lot of this is being fed through this root file over here as well. So you've got different operational modes. I think you can customize that as well. And obviously there's the different MCPs. The key to the MCP, I think I might have said this earlier, but I'm gonna say it again. Create a mode specifically for the MCP in which you want to work. Don't try to encapsulate everything. Notice I've got pretty targeted groups here. Only read, only edit, for a lot of things. This one's a little broader. It includes, some MCP options. But if you're looking to like optimize your database, just give it like read and MCP and nothing else. And then copy and paste the various settings like here, and then just basically go here. I'll just do it actually. And I'll say something like create a Supabase mode in @.ru modes with detailed query instructions and only the MCP and only as the group, something like that, right? Then I'm going to paste that in there, and now I'm going to create a Supabase specific mode that I'll use to interact with the Supabase MCP. But this works for pretty much any MCP, right? But the more targeted this, and then it keeps it on track. It won't veer off and do other crazy things. So you notice here I'm using the Edge orchestrator, which I probably didn't need to do. I probably could have done this directly, but it's thinking through the process. It's probably going to create a whole convoluted. I'm actually going to stop that for a sec. That's a bit much. So I'm just going to do that one more time. But this time I'm going to choose a better mode. So I'm just going to close this. I wasn't really paying attention to the mode, so I'm going to switch to an implementation mode. In this case, I'm just going to choose the coder. Probably good enough. And I'm going to start that one more time. Notice that my model changed. Now it's not using thinking, it's using Sonnet 3.7. I don't want the orchestrator here because it's a simple little thing. Like, why bother with an orchestrator for a one-off group that I want to create? And this is how many lines is this? Let's see how it does. This is 210 lines. Remember, never create files more than about 500 lines ever. There's pretty much no reason, unless it's an MD file possibly, to have anything above 500 lines. All right, so let's see what happens here. I'm looking to create a Supabase mode. Thinking, looking. Here we go. So you can see the chunk. See how I chunked it? Boom, done. No running through the whole darn thing. It just did it in one go. Now, did it break it? It did. I'm going to cancel that and fix it. There we go. And now we go here and we see, and you notice that it was quicker for me to just fix the error than it was to let it figure it out. Now we've got a Supabase option here somewhere, I think. Here it is. Oh no, where is it? It's not showing up. I might need to refresh this.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta have another prompt or input, and then it
Yeah. Yeah, so I might need to refresh it or wait a sec, but that's okay. It will eventually show up. Let's just there. Does it disappear? Yeah, it disappeared. Now I'll paste it back in. All right. Here we go. Did it work this time? Is there a limit? No, I don't think there's a limit. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. Maybe I've got some kind of conflict. Demo the demos doesn't want to work for me at the moment. But then generally this is how you do it. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. There's probably like a JSON error in here somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, that's how it works. I'm sure
Amazing.
it'll show
Thanks
up
for sharing. As always.
as soon as I close this, I'm sure it'll work. I'll copy and paste this in the text for you guys. But there you go.
And I don't know if anybody had a chance to play with Polaris Alpha for the 1 day or so that it was up, but I was running that through the Rue custom modes, and it did pretty well. I don't know what that model's going to end up being, but
Yeah, no,
it's OpenAI or
no one knows for sure, but word is it's 4.1.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're saying.
It was
interesting.
Very fast.
Be interesting what the Nematron models do when the DGX Spark comes out. They have some pretty cool models on NVIDIA, but they're not widely used because not a lot of hardware can support it unless you rocket an H100 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not rocking an H100.
Yeah, I'm GPU 4. I think that's it for today. I hope this was useful for you guys. Thanks for your support. Anyone that wants to get involved, reach out to us. I'm sure that there's plenty of ways for you to become agentic engineers and help support us. For those who are paying to be supporters, thank you. You're helping keep some of the lights on, or whatever lights blinking anyway. And everyone who presented today, thanks again for contributing. This is always a highlight of my week. It's a nice way to end the week when you've got this sort of, here's all the stuff we built. So again, thank you. And Rob, thanks for
wonderful.
Thanks
all.
right.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Rue.
Cheers, everybody.
Okay, till next week. Have a good weekend, and happy holidays to those who celebrate. All right.